We're here on the 4th hole, and Brian and I were just considering our tee shots here, and it's very similar to the strategy on number 3. However, I find this tee shot to be even more demanding. The hole is longer, and the bailout to the right is more severely bunkered. But Brian, let's talk a little bit how you would attack this hole and how our members should, most importantly.
Like you said, I mean, pretty similar to number 3 in terms of it's pretty straight away. There's out of bounds left, and you always want to cover that primary hazard first, right? So aiming a certain amount away from that left side is critical. But like you said, it's pretty demanding. So you're not going to hit this fairway every time you step up here. If you do find yourself out of position, I think this is where the genius of the hole comes in, is the shape of this green kind of wrapping around from front right all the way around to that skinny portion in the back left. Also plays downwind, so it can be hard to hold the green if you're coming out of the rough or sometimes out of these fairway bunkers. So finding the right angle to pitch from, similar to the first hole, can sometimes be where you find yourself after this tee shot. So,
well, and speaking of the tee shot, some of the longer hitters we know, because this hole normally plays downwind, can take it over almost all the trouble. So that's one group of golfers. But if you're a shorter hitter or that landing zone's right in the bunkers, do you think you ever consider laying up, or is it just always hit a driver and try to fit it in there?
You know, I'm always an advocate of hitting it as far as you can first, so long as you're not bringing in a penalty stroke. You know, hitting it in a fairway bunker doesn't cost you a full stroke and distance like hitting it out of bounds left. So I think unless you're going to cost yourself a full stroke penalty, by all means hit the driver, get it up as close to the green as you can. And what we're going to look at here in a moment is where we want to really pitch from and how to execute that shot so that we're planning that second shot in terms of the angle and where we end up, even if we can't get it on the putting surface.
We found ourselves to the right of the 4th green. How we got here, there's a lot of different possibilities. What do you think some of the possibilities are though, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost is you hit your tee shot out of position, and then choosing to come here can give you a pretty good angle to chip straight up this green. You can see where the hole location is today, kind of in the middle left-hand side. We've got a good angle to it, as opposed to maybe being in this bunker or even chipping over that bunker gives you a tougher angle. I think another reason would be if you just don't hit the ball far enough to fly your ball onto this green.
Yeah.
I see that a lot. You know, players will hit a good shot, and it's just a lot to ask to get the ball to fly all the way to the green. And then you're dealing with that front bunker again. So I think ending up here, you know, really isn't all that bad. We can hit kind of a low running pitch shot across the green, whether we're in the fairway or it trickles into the rough. I think it's pretty doable. So
yeah, so let's why don't you take us through these 2 shots? These are pretty basic shots, but there is a big difference between coming out of the rough and the fairway. So
yeah, for sure. I think the first one out of the rough, I'd look at evaluating the lie, seeing how high or low the ball is sitting, and trying to kind of feel that out in my practice swings a few times, just to kind of get an idea for how much that grass is going to grab my club. I think that's the first thing that I see really good players always doing, is taking multiple practice swings on this shot. And then I'm choosing a pretty low lofted club. This is my 50-degree wedge, gap wedge, just because I want this ball to run a pretty long ways to that back flag. And I'm just going to kind of keep my feet pretty close together. Again, judging the lie, judging that resistance of the turf a few times, and then just kind of making a pretty simple motion, not a lot of wrist hinge or...
I noticed a little bit of a different grip too. Do you change your grip for this shot?
I do. That was sneaky that you found that. So I tend to use my putting grip on this shot. I think it helps me sort of reduce the wrist hinge a little bit. So it's a reverse overlap grip that I use there. Certainly, by all means, don't have to do that, but it's just something that has helped me on these running shots, just kind of reduce the wrist hinge variance and just let the less loft on the club, the lower lofted club, help run it without having to add a ton of wrist hinge. So, to me, that changes how hard I'm going to hit it.
Yep, less moving parts, probably be more consistent.
No doubt.
Easier to control the distance. So that's the rough shot. What do you think about the fairway shot? I mean, obviously now we bring in some other options, right? We got a chance to maybe putt this if you're not confident in your ability to chip it.
Yeah, and
pitch it.
I would say for most players, you'd be surprised how many PGA Tour players will putt this ball. If the lie's a little sketchy at all, which we have some grainy, challenging turf here, you can see as I, again, test the lie again, how much grass is kind of kicking up as I take those practice swings. that immediately is kind of alarm bells to me, saying, you know, I might want to either consider putting it or using a much less lofted club to try to get the face of the club on the back of the ball a little bit easier. If I choose a lob wedge here, 60-degree wedge, I've got a lot of margin for error, or no margin for error, excuse me, where I might kind of dig into the turf and leave it right here. And now our whole strategy for the hole has gone out the window. Might as well just dumped it in the front bunker. So pretty straightforward, but again, I'd probably putt it.
Well, it's a common place here on the 4th hole where I know I've been plenty of times, and I'm sure I can speak for the entire membership. You get a lot of shots over here on number 4 to the right side of the green, and hopefully this gives you some different strategies for how to play this hole and score better.